I do that, I want to officially welcome you to our Thursday Zoom class, our Zoom variety class here. I'm coming to you today from our store in Sun City Center, Florida. So I know sometimes we have folks from Arizona, from Florida. I think we had some students from Ohio. You know, we have some of our students that go north for the season. So we got people all over the U.S. and we have students that join us from the U.K. too. So it's so cool to be with everybody and to be able to continue our musical education together virtually. Okay, so today I'm going to get right into my my material because I got a lot of stuff I want to cover, and I'm hoping that you guys will get some stuff out of this. Those of you who have taken my classes before, you know that my favorite things to talk about as far as the importance to our hobby of music is the music styles and the sounds. And today, I want to take what I would call a deep dive into our melody sounds. So feel free to take some notes if you want to, but I will show you on my screen here. You'll be getting this, which you can see at the top. It says Exploring Melody Sounds. You'll get this with the weekly materials that Robert sends out. So this is exactly what I'm going to be covering today. And there are 4 groups of setups or presets that I'm going to cover. So you can see at the top there, we're going to start with general setups or general presets. Then we're going to get into style setups or rhythm presets. Then we're going to get into category setups. And then we're going to end with bank setups. Okay. Now, I will say right off the bat that not everybody is going to have every button or feature that I talk about. For example, if you don't have numbered buttons in the middle of your screen, so if I show you here on my other camera, many of the instruments will have numbered buttons in the middle of the panel here. Okay, so like an Easy 10, for example, will have numbers 1 through 5. Some of the instruments will have 1 through 8, and the biggest instruments will have 1 through 10. Okay, so if you don't have those numbers, that's okay. You'll still be included in this as well, and we'll talk about how you can find some of the similar sounds. But as always, make sure if you have a question that you raise your hand, either by clicking that raise hand button or by just kind of, waving around, and hopefully Sean or I will see you and we can answer any questions that you do have. So having said that, I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to pull back up my screen here, and we're going to start with the general setups. Now, I should preface the whole thing by saying that sometimes we use the words setup and or setups and presets interchangeably. Okay, if you have an A series instrument or an SU instrument, it was always called presets. Category presets, general presets, rhythm presets, etc. Okay, if you have an E series instrument, they changed it so that they call them style setups, category setups, bank setups, etc. So if you hear me, flip-flop with the words, if I use setups versus presets, just know that that means virtually the same thing. So depending on what model you have, it's either presets or setups, and it's basically the same thing. Okay, so having said that, I'm going to start with general setups, general presets, because when you first turn on your instrument, those are the sounds that you get if you touch one of your numbers 1 through 10. And not everybody knows that. In the middle of the instrument, it actually says general setups or general presets, but a lot of people don't know what those actually are. And so I wrote there, it's a variety of some of the most popular melody sounds. Remember, today we're just talking about melody sounds. So the sounds that you would play with your right hand, and that's for the part of the song that you would sing, right, the melody. So the general setups are going to be a variety of those popular melody sounds, and they can be used with or without a music style. Okay, so that means you can play with just your easy button, or if you're somebody who plays pedals and all that, you can do that too. Or you can choose to put on like a Latin style or a polka or a big band style or whatever you like. Okay, so I'm going to show you the screen, my other screen here, and hopefully you'll be able to see this pretty well. We got the big screen above our organ there. So that window right there, now there's a little bit of a glare, but hopefully you can see that pretty well. That's what I'm seeing on my big window right now. Now you can see way at the top, I don't know if I can, you can find it somewhere there. It says general. Now, general means general presets or general setups. And you can see there, the first three are organ sounds. Okay? So you have more, what they call the more organ. It's kind of just like it's kind of like a softer organ. You have a nice pipe organ, great for phantom and that kind of stuff. Theater organ, you have the chimes. Hopefully this is looking familiar to some people. And again, this is if you just turned on your instrument and then you touched one of your numbers in the center. This is what you would get. Now, the exception to this, okay, as I go back to my other screen, is, I put by the stars here, while many instruments will have those same general setups, the ones that I just showed you, there are some, in particular some of the E-series models, that will have different sounds. And that's okay. They all sound really, really good. And it just depends on the model that you have. For example, if you have an Easy 10, you have the numbers 1 through 5. Well, your numbers 1 through 5 are not going to match up with those numbers 1 through 5. Okay, and that's okay. You still get great sounds, but those are what they call the general presets or general setups. Okay, so let me play a few of these for you. Just for fun, I want to take you on a little tour of our general setups. That's fun, right? So those are your general setups. And again, it might be a little bit different on your instrument, but those are the sounds that you get if you just turn on the instrument and you select any of those numbered buttons in the middle. Okay? Ooh, I just saw Gene Bruner said, hello from Rochester, New York. That's right near my hometown. I grew up in Corfu, New York. I don't know if anybody knows that. It's out by kind of halfway between Buffalo and Rochester. Anyway, so those are the general setups. So again, one more time, it might be a little bit different depending on what instrument you have, but if you have one of the SU series, like a Royale or a Stardust or any of those, or an A series, like I'm on the Legend here today, so the Legend, the Prestige, the Sterling, Patriot, the Liberty, all of those should be the same, but if you have something like a Fanfare, an Easy 10, a Journey, Concorde, maybe the Inspire might be a little bit different. But as long as you know that that's what the general setups are. And again, if you look on the screen, you'll always know what you're on. Okay? And I had somebody ask this question yesterday, and in case anybody's wondering, well, how do you get that screen? Right? How do you get that screen that I was just on there? So what I was showing you on that big TV, that's what I'm seeing on the window here. And somebody asked yesterday, well, how do you get that? And that's an important question. So if you have a big window instrument, so anything that's about that size or larger, okay, there's a button way over here. If you follow the lower keyboard all the way to the left, And then past where the keys start here, you have a series of custom buttons. So on this one, on the legend, it says custom 1, 2, 3. On the legend, and in fact on the Inspire and the Rialto, I believe are the others, if you touch custom 3, that's what shows that screen there, custom 3. If you're on an instrument that has up to custom 4 or up to custom 5, then it's going to be the custom 4 button. Okay, so if you have only up to custom 3, it's custom 3. That's the one that shows you that screen. They call it the active preset display. That's the fancy word for it. Okay.
My favorite button.
I love it. I mean, really, if you watch us play, chances are most of us have this screen up all the time, right? Because it tells you all of the sounds that are in your numbered buttons. It's one of the best features of having a big window instrument, in my opinion. Okay, so if you have only up to custom 3, it's number 3. If you have up to custom 4 or 5, it'll be number 4. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that, about your general setups? All right. So I'm going to move on to the next one here, arguably my favorite of the bunch here that we're going to talk about today, although they're all really good, so it's hard to say. But the next group here are your style setups or rhythm presets. So hopefully you can see it on the screen there. And again, these terms are kind of used interchangeably, so style setups, rhythm presets. If you happen to have a button that says vintage, then vintage is going to be closest to the rhythm presets that you're familiar with, if you had one of those previous models. Okay, so this is a little bit different, this group. Now, I know we've talked about this before, but there are a couple things here that I'd like to point out that I hope will be new information to some folks, and if it isn't, it'll be a nice review for you. So style setups or rhythm presets are melody sounds that are based on what music style you select. Because of that, they can only be used with a music style. Okay, and what I mean by that, if I pop back to my other screen here, okay, if I have my rhythm preset turned on, I have to select a style, you know, something like Broadway or country or ballad or whatever. You can pick anything, but you have to pick something. And the reason for that is because if I select country, all of the sounds that are in my numbers 1 through 10 or numbers 1 through 5, or even if you have an easy 1 or an easy 2 or an easy 4, if you don't have those numbers in the middle, you still have style setup. And hopefully you know that. But if you don't, after the class, make sure you go and find that style setup button, because everybody has one of the two, either style setup or rhythm preset. And remember, they do the same thing. So what happens is, even if you don't have those numbers 1 through 10 or 1 through 5, it'll pick one sound for you. Or if you have a 2-keyboard instrument, many of those will pick a sound for the upper and for the lower. So you have 2 sounds. Okay? But the point being that if I'm on country, however many sounds it picks, those are all going to be country sounds. And the only reason the instrument was able to do that is because I selected the country style. So here I have country guitar. I have fiddle. I have kind of a honky-tonk piano. Got some duet guitars over here. All right, all country sounds, though. I got Floyd Kramer's piano in there. We'll come back to him in a minute, though. Great harmonicas. But as soon as I switch, now watch, I'm just going to touch one button, okay? I'm going to go from country to, let's just do big band, because that's right next door there. Now, immediately, by touching that one button, all of my numbers in the middle are now big band instruments. Okay, they were just country instruments a second ago, right? But now I touch big band. Now everything is a big band instrument. So I have stuff like saxophone. I have that jazz organ. That's one of my favorites. Got a nice jazz guitar. Got Dixie trumpet. This is a fun one, the jazz scat singers. Do, ba, da, shoo, ba, da, do, ba, do, ba, shoo. A little harder to do one-handed, but those are the kind of shooby-doo-bop kind of. Dooby-doo-bop. That's fun. And of course, you have your sax section. And the brass section. So instantly, by touching a different style, everything in here was transformed to a different set of instruments because these are conditional on whatever you pick. Whatever style you select, it's going to put those instruments that belong with that genre of music in your style setups or rhythm presets. Looks like we have a question here from Cheryl.
Yeah, my question is, when I pressed country, I didn't get the sounds that you talked about.
What instrument do you have?
I have the Rialto.
So,
country, the train, bluegrass, ring of cash, Tennessee tons.
Uh-huh. So if you look to the left of your numbers 1 through 10, do you see a button that says Style Setup?
Yes.
And is that lit up?
Yeah, I have number 4 lit up.
But to the left of the numbers, though, there's a button that just says Style Setup.
Yes, it's on.
It is on? And yeah. So touch, if you'd go all the way over to that custom number 3 button I talked about, all the way to the left of the lower keyboard, where it shows you all the sounds that you get.
Yeah.
What does it say in the window?
It says next setup, touch to change, foot switches, left, right, and at the bottom include banks.
Do you have a number 4 custom button?
It doesn't have a number on it.
Well, it should be telling you the sounds that.
Button, it says number 2. I have number 1, 2, 3 custom button.
Yeah. Did you touch number 3?
I did now.
Okay. Now does it tell you in the window?
Yes, it does.
Does it say all country sounds if you're on country?
No, Chet's guitar.
Yep.
Oh,
that's
okay.
The one. So that's that feature that Sean and I like so much. That's a good question, though. So thank you. That's one of those things that Sean and I like so much that all of the teachers and performers, we all use that. It's that active preset display. It'll show you all those sounds. Okay, and remember, you don't have to necessarily have the window. So if we have any folks that have the smaller screen where you don't have the touch screen window, you still have that rhythm preset or style setup, meaning that when you touch Latin, you're going to be set up with at least 1 or potentially 2, if you have a 2 keyboard. You're going to be set up with 1 or 2 sounds for that style. That's why they call it style setup, right? And then you change to a different one, you get a new sound automatically. Okay, so those sounds change based on what you've selected. And that's what they're designed to do, right? Somebody took, I said yesterday, probably a group of somebodies, took a long time programming all of these sounds, so it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. Okay, so everybody has that on their instrument. It's just a matter of how many sounds you get. If you have just the 1 button that says rhythm preset or style setup, you'll get 1 or potentially 2 sounds if you have the 2 keyboard. If you have numbers 1 through 5, you still get that initial 2 sounds plus 5 more setups, so 10 more sounds. And of course, if you have 8 or 10, you get even more. Okay, so potentially for a total of 22 melody sounds per style. Okay, now another thing, this is what I thought may be new information for some folks. Okay, now I put this in the stars of this section here. Your style setup or rhythm preset button can actually be in 3 different modes. And what I mean by that is it can be on off or on or standby. Okay, so if it's off, hopefully that one's pretty self-explanatory. That means it is not lit up at all, and that means that you have something else selected. If it's on, that means it's lit up red, meaning that not the button itself doesn't turn red, but the backlight is red. Okay, it's usually a purple button or on some instruments a blue button, but the light itself would be red. That means that style setup or rhythm preset is active, and that your, whether you have the 1 button or 5 or 10, that would mean that all of those are activated for style setup. Here's where it gets a little tricky for some people. If it's lit up orange, that means it's in standby. That means it's technically on, but it's waiting for you to select a style, because remember, it's contingent upon you picking one of the music styles to get the sounds for that style, right? The organs, man, they sure do a lot, but they're not reading minds, okay? So they don't know what sounds you're going to play with for style setup until you pick that style. So I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see it from there, but here's my rhythm preset button right here. I'm pointing to it on the screen. Okay, so if it's off, right? There we go. If it's turned off, it's not lit up at all. Okay, if I were to push it on right now, it lights up orange. And it's lighting up orange because I haven't actually selected any music style yet. Okay, so if you ever see it turn on orange, and if you've never paid attention, look at it when you first turn on your instrument. When you first turn it on, no matter what instrument you have, it's going to turn on orange. Okay? Now, watch the change here. I'm going to have to touch another button, but watch where I'm pointing right now. See if you can see it change from orange to red. Okay, as soon as I touch any music style, do you see it change a little bit there? So there it's orange because I don't have a style turned on. And there it switches to red because I just touched a style. Okay, so if you ever see it lit up orange, that means that you're not actually using style setups yet because you haven't selected a style. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about that? All right, and one more thing on that. I think I might have skipped over this. I think I wrote this on my sheet here. Yeah, right here, this part right here. I wrote that it's the easiest way to sound good without pushing many buttons, okay, and by using your style setups or rhythm presets. And why I say that is because a lot of times you might see some of the performers, they'll get up and they'll say, okay, I'm going to play this style, and I'm going to do this, okay, I'm going to do this, touch about 100 buttons, and then they're off to the races. And it sounds great, but people who are watching are like, man, what the heck did you just do? I don't want to sit down and touch 30 buttons before I start playing, and if I did, I wouldn't even know which buttons to push. So if I reset the instrument, okay, I'm going to just click the reset button here. So it's going to boot up just from scratch. The Legend actually has a beautiful little screen here. It shows the ocean or the Gulf here. Okay, so it just booted back up. Now, I'm just going to touch one button. I'm going to pick, what do I want to play? Let's play a Broadway tune. I like Broadway. So I touched one button. You saw there, the Broadway button. Because this was already turned on in standby mode, it already, just by me selecting Broadway, has already picked out all of these sounds. So I can just start playing right now, but I'm going to touch one more button, and that's the one that Cheryl, I believe, was talking about, that custom 3 or custom 4, depending on what you have. Now I can see in my window all of the sounds. So if I wanted to do strings and bells, I could touch number 9. Right? So, man, I didn't have to touch 30 buttons. I just touched a couple, and now I'm ready to play something. So let's do some music.
Woohoo!
So wasn't that huge full sound, really nice style, really nice melody stuff, and I didn't have to touch many buttons. I didn't have to load saved presets, which can be nice, but I didn't have to do any of that. I turned the instrument on, I touched one button to select the style, I picked the one I want, and I'm good to go. Okay? So those are your style setups or rhythm presets. I'm going to move on to our next one here because I don't see any hands raised. But if you do have any questions, make sure that you ask. Okay. And we're going to move on to category setups. Okay, category setups are they're groups of melody sounds that fit into a specific category, right? That's why they call them category setups. Just like your general setups, these can be used with or without a music style. And I actually just had one of our students, I don't know if she's on now, but she just popped into the store and she was asking if you can use category setups without touching Latin or without touching rock or anything like that for a music style. And I said, yeah, the category setups you can use anytime. In fact, the only setups that require a style are style setups. Okay. Now, if you're somebody who is super, super technical, I mentioned this yesterday, but there is technically a way or possibly two ways, depending on your instrument, that you potentially can technically use style setups or rhythm presets without a style on. For the 99.9% of us that don't care to go that technical, just keep in mind that with style setups or rhythm presets, you need to have a style on. For any of the other three, you do not need a style on, but you can if you want. Okay, so for category, that falls under that umbrella. They can be used with or without a music style. And what I wrote here in the parentheses is this is a great option, the category setups, if you want to choose any melody sounds that don't necessarily match your style. One of my favorites is picking a Latin music style, but then using big band sounds. Okay. Now you can get really creative with this. It doesn't have to be any specific combination, but I can't tell you how many times over the years I've heard a student say, okay, well, what I do is I come over here and I touch Latin, and then I come over here and touch Latin. Okay, and in case you didn't see that, what I mean is they select a Latin music style, right, a Latin band, and then they come over here and touch Latin category setups for their Latin sounds. Okay, now, can you do that? Will it sound good? Yeah, absolutely, because that means you have a Latin band and Latin melody sounds. That obviously fits. But you can get that with your rhythm presets or style setups that we just talked about. So if you have a specific one that you want, sure, you can go over to Latin, but you could also go over to big band. Okay, so I could play a Latin song, but use my big band instruments, and that's what I'm going to do. Check this out. So that last one there was the Ray Anthony Brass, and that is on your big band category setup 0. That's one of my all-time favorites. That came out on the A series first. Ray Anthony Brass, really, really beautiful block harmony. Looks like we got a question from Ramon. Ramon, feel free to unmute yourself there. How you doing?
Good, Brian. Now you selected the Latin music first and then big band category.
Correct. That's what I did that time. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to do a more ridiculous example now, just to highlight the point that you can do pretty much any combination that you want. I did this yesterday, and I thought this was kind of funny. Now, I wouldn't necessarily do this for a live performance, okay, but just to illustrate the fact that you can mix and match whatever you want, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a polka music style. Okay, so polka would normally give you instruments like accordion, trombone, clarinets, bells, woodwinds, that kind of stuff. And of course, that sounds good with polka. But remember, I can come over to my category setups, and select anything I want. So I don't have to have polka sounds. So I'm going to play a little bit of beer barrel polka, but I'm going to bring in country melody sounds. Now, again, I'm not saying this sounds good, so if people cringe, that's okay. But this is going to be a little bit of beer barrel polka with a polka rhythm style and country melody sounds from my country category. Actually wasn't that bad. But again, probably not something I'd do for a concert. But my point being is that hopefully you'll remember that you can pick any music style and use any category for it, any category setups. Of course, if you match something that's more traditional, it's probably going to sound better. But when you're playing for you. So if it sounds good to you, if you want to kind of think a little bit wacky or outside the box, we had a student of ours a couple years back who loved to play the song Mary Ann, which is normally, on like a Latin style. She liked to play it with the train using the banjo. So, if it works, it works. Whatever you like. I got another question from Cheryl. Hello again, Cheryl.
Hi, sorry, my second music.
No, it's okay.
How did you get the polka sound?
So that's a good question. So in case you didn't hear it, it was how do you get the polka sound? So the polka is a style, or I should say it's a group of styles on this instrument. If you have an SU or an A series, you're going to have a button that says polka. But on yours, you said you had a Rialto, right?
Yes.
So if you have an E series instrument, that Rialto is an E series, it's going to be under traditional. Okay, polka is under the traditional. That has a lot of the marches and the polkas. So if you touch traditional, and then you might have to touch next page on your screen, it should show you the polkas. It should say like happy polka and that kind of stuff.
Okay, I'll try it. Yeah.
All right, thank you for the question. Yeah, when we went from the A series to the E series, a lot of the styles and buttons and features got renamed. And I think for the better, it's maybe a little bit more clear how they're grouped, but sometimes there's a little bit of a learning curve. At least there certainly was for me when I was trying to find stuff. I want to mention one more thing about the categories here real quick, and that is, I wrote it down on my sheet. Let me put this back up. And again, in case anybody missed this, you will be getting this sheet emailed to you in Robert's weekly email of your class materials. So remember, the category setups can be used with or without a music style. But I put in the stars there. If you have the option for more and or a next page option on your actual screen on the big window, make sure you explore those sounds. Because if you have more or next page, or both of them on some instruments, that means that you have even more sounds than you think. And the reason I wanted to mention the more button is because every instrument, I shouldn't say every, but many, many instruments have the more button. The entire E series has them, Easy 1, Easy 2, Easy 3, Easy 4, Easy 10, all the way up to the aria. All of the SU instruments are going to have more. And some of you have multiple more buttons, and it all depends on what part of the instrument we're talking about. But regardless of what part it is, what that more button means is that they just ran out of room on the instrument panel. They can't possibly put a button for every single thing on the instrument on the panel. There's just not enough room. So what they have done is they've put these various more buttons. For example, on the Easy 1, if you look all the way to the right, you're going to have your melody sounds that will say like organ, pianos, guitars, strings, and then more. When you touch more, those are all the other sounds, like, you know, bells and I think choir and whatever else is in there, vibes, that kind of stuff, that they just didn't have enough buttons for. So on, you know, relevant to what we're talking about right now, the more button that I'm talking about is in your category setups. So on the Legend here and on most of the SU and A series instruments, what you'll have is some of these categories are lit up, or are the buttons here are on the panel. So I have country lit up right now. Next one over is big band. Next one is show. Next one is Latin. And then the next one after that is more. That's the important one. The others are important too, but remember that each one of these buttons provides me with 22 melody sounds. So if I touch country, I get 22 melody sounds in my buttons here. If I touch big band, I get 22 sounds. But when I go to more, here's what happens. Let me pop you up back to the screen here. Okay, so I was on Latin before that. Okay, now Latin, of course, is going to have all my Latin sounds. That's my active preset display, and you can see it says up in the top left of the screen, category Latin. So it'll tell you exactly what you're on. Okay, when I touch more, check this out. More pops up 8 different words here. And in case you can't see it, those are sacred, modern, bells, holidays, jazz, brass, nostalgic, and lush. Now, each one of those terms there is like having an additional white button like country, big band, show, and Latin. Each one of those provides me with an additional 22 melody sounds. Okay, so I don't have it on this instrument, but on many of them right here in this part of the screen will be a button that says next page. That's really important because if you touch next page, you'll get another 8 or another 10 or whatever. You know, on some of the instruments, you might have 4 or 5 pages of these. And keep in mind that every single one of those provides you an additional whole group of sounds. So I'm going to show you one of my favorite ones on here. I did the lush category yesterday, so I'm going to do nostalgic today. Nostalgic I always think of as the name category, and I'll show you why. If I touch my active preset display, look at all those names on the screen. I got Louis Armstrong, I got Harry James, I got the Dorseys, Tommy and Jimmy there. I've got Dennis Oz, awesome organ. One of my favorites, the Stradivarius violin and cello. So let me take you on a little spin through some of these sounds here. This is the nostalgic category. So pretty cool sounds, I think. That's just one of them. Obviously, I don't have enough time to go through all of the categories today, or we'd be here well past dinner time, even for Arizona folks, probably. So that is, I think, where I'll leave it for the categories. Does anybody have any questions about those? Got one more group I want to cover real quick here. I don't see any questions there. So I'm going to go to my last one, my last group here of your sounds, and that is the bank setups or bank presets. So again, not everybody has all of these buttons, but a lot of, or everybody really has most of, or some of these sounds. So like the first three we're talking about here, bank A, B, and C, are the Lowry organ sound, the jazz organ sound, and the classical organ. And that's going to be on almost every single instrument. The Lowry organ, of course, is on every instrument. Jazz organ is going to be on like 99% of them, and classical organs, theater organs, pipe organs are going to be on almost all of them as well. You just have to find your organ button. Okay, if you don't have these banks, you just got to find the organ button on your melody sounds. Okay. So I'm going to show you a few of these. I'll go back to our screen here so you can see some of the stuff here. But to the left of your numbers 1 through 10, if you go over this way, you should see bank presets or bank setups. And on some instruments, like for example, if you have a fanfare or a journey, you're going to have bank A, and that'll be it. Okay. On some instruments, you might have A, B, and C. On the Legend here, I have A, B, C, D. And then on the higher end models, you'll have all the way A through E. Okay. And I'll show you bank A first. And this is another group, by the way, which you can use with or without a music style. So I'm going to do without, just with the easy button. And I'm going to show you some of these pretty Lowry organ sounds. All right, the next one here is Bank B, and I have to admit this probably is my favorite one out of the 5 of the banks, and that's because this is the jazz organ. Now they can't call it Hammond organ because that's against the copyright or trademark or patents or whatever it is. So we can't, as Lowry, they couldn't call it Hammond organ. But if anybody knows that signature Hammond organ sound, doesn't matter. I don't care what they call it. They can call it jazz organ or whatever they want. The sound is what matters, and this sounds pretty darn close to what the Hammond organs would sound like. So all of the Bank B sounds are jazz or Hammond organ sounds. There we go with a little jazz organ. And I got to show you one more from this one because this one's maybe one of my favorites within this category, but I had to say something about it first. It's called Lenny's B. B as in B3, which is one of the Hammond models, the famous Hammond B3. And of course, you should know Lenny. So this is his signature sound. And it's called Lenny's B. And if you can, I don't know if anybody has headphones on, you should be able to hear this kind of well, but even in person, it's better. It has this kind of, I used to call it the ping pong effect, where the sound bounces back and forth between the two speakers, so you can hear it go here, 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 here. So check this out. Can you hear that? Hopefully that's coming through on Zoom, but check this out. In the context of a song, sounds amazing. I don't know. I love that one.
That's great.
So, and then moving on here, C, Bank C is going to be your classical organs. So from some fairly kind of subtle ones, a little bit softer sound, to the big fortissimo organs, big, really, really loud and full. Very, very cool for classical stuff, for phantom, all that kind of stuff. Sounds very good. Those are fun too. And lastly, on this one is Bank D, which is your orchestral sound. So if you picture a big 101-piece string orchestra on the stage, these are the instruments that you'd expect to see. You got violins and cellos, French horn, possibly a vocalist, group of vocalists, a choir. You got your pizzicato strings; those are kind of fun. Those are where the players will pluck the strings instead of actually bowing them. You got chamber orchestra. Oh gosh, I got to play a little bit of that one. Chamber orchestra has the best harmony. Listen to this.
Good old John Williams.
Yeah, isn't that a good one? That's the theme from Home Alone, if anybody recognized that. That's called Somewhere in My Memory. Great song. Now, I don't have Bank E to show you, but remember I showed you on the screen there, Bank E, those are the novelty sounds. Sean called them the silly sounds, which I actually like that word better. But if you ever go to Bank E, you're going to see things like the cows and the chickens and the buzzing bees and the opera singer and all types of fun stuff in there. Okay. And I wrote lastly here at the bottom that these can also be changed. So the bank setups, those are just the factory settings that I'm showing you. In other words, those are if you did a total reset or if you got your instrument new from the factory, those are the sounds that would be in there. You can change any of those banks to any sounds that you want by custom programming it. However, that is a topic certainly for another class because we are coming up on our hour already here pretty quick. But if that's something that you want to know more about, make sure you contact one of your local staff members because they're all very capable of showing you how to save your own setups if that's something that you're interested in. All righty. So before I do a couple quick announcements here, does anybody have any questions on anything we talked about today? We got the four main groups, right? We had your general setups. We had your, what did I do next year? Style setups or rhythm presets. We had your category setups, and finally your bank setups. Dee Dee said that was a fast hour. Thanks, Dee Dee. Hopefully that's a good thing.
I think it is.
Don't. That's my other. I know. Now they can see it. Joni wants you to see me. Hello. So I will reiterate. Remember, if you don't have these buttons that I've talked about, so if you don't have like Bank A, Bank B, or if you don't have category presets or anything like that, chances are you have at least some, if not a majority of the sounds. What I told the group yesterday is that you might just have to do a little bit more homework in order to get them. It doesn't mean that they're not on there, But as you get up into some of the higher end models and you get some of these other buttons, they just group them together in a way that makes a little bit more sense so that they're easier to find, especially if you're somebody who doesn't go and save all your own setups, that you can go in and just sit down and play. And that's what I like to do. I don't like to mess around with the stick too much. I just like to sit down, touch a couple of buttons, and hopefully the instrument will sound good, and then hopefully I can sound good too. All righty, so I don't see anybody with any questions. I just have one announcement today, just a real quick one. We have a very special concert artist tomorrow. As hopefully most of you know, we do our weekly Zoom musical, and that happens every Friday at 2 o'clock Florida time and 11 o'clock Arizona time. And our special, very special guest artist for tomorrow, everybody's going to know this guy, and I want you to know how much work he has done behind the scenes to make all this stuff happen is really unfathomable. He is single-handedly responsible for getting everything going for us as a staff and us collectively as hobby musicians and students. He was really the mastermind behind all of the Zoom stuff. You hear from him every week, and in addition to being our national sales manager and the vice president of the company and the guy who does all this online stuff and is up so early in the morning and so late at night working on uploading the videos to our YouTube channel and all this, he's also a fantastic player. And of course, I'm talking about none other than the wonderful Robert Roman. And he's going to be our special guest tomorrow for our concert. If you haven't seen him play, man, you've been either missing out or hiding under a rock. I don't know what to tell you. And if you have, I know you'll be on there if you can, because this is going to be a really, really special one. Sean told me yesterday that Robert's really going to pull out some stops for tomorrow. He's really going to go wild
nuts tomorrow.
Yeah. So, and if you've seen him play before, you know his energy level is already here. So, if he's going to go off the charts, who knows what to expect? But it'll be a great show. Again, that's going to be 2 o'clock tomorrow on Zoom for Florida time and 11 o'clock Arizona time. And we'd love to see you all there. We had a really, really good turnout. I think we were approaching 250 people for our last concert. So if you know anybody who would like to watch, all you have to do is just forward the email to them. Our emails that we send out, that Robert sends to you, when you click that link, it's not necessarily exclusive for Fletcher students. So if you know somebody who just wants to listen to a concert, forward them that email. They can just click the same link that you do, and then they'll join in, and they'll be able to have some fun and watch some live music from anywhere in the world. So I think that's it. Do you have any announcements, Sean?
I have one announcement.
Okay.
Today, Brian talked a lot about that right hand, and melody sounds. Well, next week you have a guest teacher, and that's me. So I'm going to be teaching you next week, and I've got a bunch of stuff for the left hand. So it's going to be about choosing a rhythm style. I'm really excited for it, and I know I'm teaching, but come anyway. You'll have a good time. I've got a lot of cool stuff. So that's all we got for today, I think.
All right. Well, I will sign off with one more number here, and I'm going to use, let's see, I'm going to use those nostalgic sounds again. So remember, those nostalgic sounds are part of your category presets or your category setups. I'm going to put on a big band or a swing style here, and leave you with one more tune for the day.
my favorite songs of all time. I love that one.
Mine too. Mine too.
It's from Willy Wonka, right?
It is. It is. Pure Imagination is the name of that one. One of my all-time faves. So thank you again, everybody, for hanging out. I will unmute everybody if you'd like to say goodbye or any last comments here for today. But hopefully we'll see everybody on Zoom tomorrow, 2 o'clock Florida, 11 o'clock Arizona. For Robert Roman.
See you Monday.
Brian.
Thanks,
Brian.
Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Very welcome, everybody. My pleasure, as always.
Still waiting for my classical song.
That's right. I always forget to play the classical song. Remind me in the middle of the lesson next time.
Oodaloo.
So long, everybody.
Goodbye.
All righty. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, Brian.